So first of all, thanks for giving us the opportunity to attend this event and provide our contribution to the discussion. So first thing to say, differently from the project presented so far, we are focusing on a different energy infrastructure, the oil and gas one, and specifically in the gas one. And also the project is addressing a different topic, which was the protection of critical infrastructure. So cyber is part of it, but it's not the only threats that we are going to tackle. That's why we will have an approach to correlate cyber and physical threats mainly, basically. So gas network is a very distributed network, first of all. That's an important thing, which has cross-border, cross-national dimension. So cascading effect among cross-border and cross-border dimension is essential for a gas network and for the independency, of course, of gas supply in Europe and abroad. We are then focused on 3 specific areas, Italy, Greece, and Lithuania, for making the pilots. Otherwise, would have been impossible in only 2 years. The objectives is the security and resilience of the gas network, and all is a critical installation against cyber and physical threats, and their combination. Of course, this is the tricky point. And as you can see in this slide that you know very well, the oil and gas sector is not a sector per se, but is heavily correlated and dependent on the other sector, the power one, of course. So an attack to the electricity network, an attack to the power sector, an attack to a communication sector, for sure will have an impact also on the oil and gas pipelines and the supply. Cyber on the oil and gas. Of course, whilst for physical threats, we have a huge database and the reporting of incidents so far since the 1917, for the cyber one, we have really less information. Incidents are happening, their frequency is becoming even more frequent, also in the gas sector. Of course, their impact, we know very well, it's quite high. The 2 main types of attacks experienced so far are ransomware attacks and cyber attacks on the OT network of SCADA system. For ransomware, we had a very nice experience, not for them, a very interesting for a scientific point of view or for project point of view experience recently, which was the cyber attack to the Colonial Pipeline, the largest fuel pipeline in the US, who had to cut down their production for the first time in their 57 years history. So you can easily understand that the impact of this type of attack on an oil and gas pipeline and network is quite huge, apart from the financial, of course, and reputational ones. So how we are tackling all these things, which are very complex, by a set of components which are looking at different aspects of the situational awareness picture and the decision support for the end user. And some of them are specifically dealing with cyber threats and cyber countermeasure, and as well correlation of cyber and physical issues. So we have a cyber physical correlator, we have a joint cyber physical resilience management tool and approach, we have a cyber security solution for IT and OT network weakness, we have probes, so we have all this stuff that are relevant to the situation. And since the TRL of the project is quite high, we are going to test and implement and test and validate in real field operation, in real relevant industrial environment. So at the end of the day, SecureGas has market-ready, market-available solution. And the 3 business cases, and I will conclude my presentation, we are going to implement all this type of things, have been designed in 3 different geographic locations, as I said, but more importantly, and also for in terms of replicability and scalability, they are targeting the whole value chain of the oil and gas supply. So from production upstream up to downstream, so as the demand. I'd like to take two elements that the other panelists already proposed. And I guess that here the problem is of 2 nature. One is the political willingness, and one is a strategic, let's say, focus. The political willingness is, of course, the willingness to cooperate among cross-border issues, among countries, member states, operators, which have networks that span cross-border and are naturally cross-border connected. But there is a political willingness that have to put in place this. What Sofia said about ENISA is for sure a political willingness, and it's it's quite relevant. I don't think this is enough. I don't think that always creating an overlayer and an over architecture solve the problem, but let's see. It's really something that on a pragmatic way, member state has to follow, and it's a cultural issue also for operators, which are sharing in their panels and in their forums, of course, issues that are dealing with cascading effect as well. But this has to be a bit more, I would say, open and transparent in my view. Then it is a strategic problem, because you can address cascading and cross-border only from a strategic perspective. What I mean with this, Lavinia say is a supply chain issue. I fully agree. I would say is a value chain also issue, which is slightly different, because as I've shown you with the SecureGas business approach, so we are going from production to distribution. You can have production somewhere and the distribution is completely in another country, in another region, in another zone, facing other issues, managed by other operators and so on. Only in this way, so through a value chain approach, you can really be able to see which are of the weakness, the points where this effect can happen and can have an impact not only on the specific value chain, of course we are talking about the oil and gas, but on other value and supply chain which are heavily connected. Of course, for the oil and gas sector, this is even more relevant, because the security of the supply is a strategic issue for Europe, is a political and geopolitical matter as well, more than in other sectors, for instance, but is there, is present, and it can be easily understood also by, I would say, stakeholders and by citizens. So that's why, again, and to conclude, the political willingness in tackling this type of issues is fundamental. And just from a technical point of view, a very, very, very specific matter, in our opinion, the segregation of cyber and physical elements should not be there in the future. I mean, we have two directives, fine. One is the NIS2, and one is the new proposed directive on the resilience of critical entities that look for an all-hazard approach, and I would say somehow look at NIS2 as a reference for cyber. Come on, I'm thinking that in the future we should have one directive that is tackling cyber and physical threats. So this is a very difficult question, I think, from a technical point of view, because you asked how to ensure legacy, introducing new technology without allowing them to be, I mean, corrupted or attacked by a cyber attack, which is a bit different story than simply making a connection, a plug-in connection. So we have done what also the others did in a different sector. So we have a very scalable architecture that starts from the field layer, which are the legacy system of the operator in place, and then going up, it goes to the situational awareness layer that release information to the public. However, I do not really have an answer to your question, to be frank, and I have to admit that this is an issue, in my point of view, very technical and very difficult to solve, because it's not just a matter of, as I say, connecting and making a scalable architecture, but it's a matter of, I don't know, making some stress tests on the new devices once they are engaged in an ecosystem which is broader than the one they are used to be, and what could be the effect of this new device on the ecosystem they are connected with. So we have not done specifically a test like this in SecureGas, and maybe this could be an opportunity eventually for the future to discover also new vulnerabilities or to detect new anomalies that the combination of this new technology would imply. For sure, IoT is everywhere, and everyone is connected through an IoT device. The IoT devices are available also in the oil and gas sector, in the plants, in the installation, and so on. I will just say the following. I will report on real data about what does real time means, which does not exist, as the other have said. So the Colonial pipeline, again, that I did, that I mentioned before events. So the attack was finally performed at 5 a.m. At 6:10 a.m., the entire pipeline had been shut down. That's the time we are talking about, maybe. In my opinion, segregation on cyber and physical should not exist if we want really to move on. I have, for instance, copy and paste something that is done in the US, a guide to understand the benefits of it from CISA, CISA. In my opinion, that this is needed because there is another level of threats that sooner or later we have to face, or we are already facing, which are the hybrid threats, which are not the physical and cyber threats, nor their combination, but different type of threats, which will enter into the game with cyber and physical threats. So we need to make an effort in that direction to try to remove walls and segregation. I know it is not easy, of course. I mean, we are talking about this for many years. Maybe starting from points such as a certification mechanism and things that touch the real business operation would allow certain movements in that direction.